All right, everybody, welcome back to Late Night with Nicky. Yes, we're trying out a new name because we like this name better for whatever reason. He's Izzy, I'm Nick. We're back, and we had fun coming back for the first time in about, what would you say, a couple months because of the pandemic.
Oh my gosh, yes, brothers and sisters. It has been so crazy because, we've been running around like, oh, crazy people. Oh, Nick and I, but it's all good though. It's all good though because, I got to tell you, me personally though, brother, I am so grateful that like I was working like the whole time because if I wasn't working, I would be in so much trouble right now. I really would be.
But before we get to the fun and games that we'll talk about, because we try to get into what we've been through in the last week or so since we've last spoken to you, but there's an important issue on the table that we wanted to discuss. I spoke to Izzy about this, and there was an important. I don't know if you want to. What's the best way to describe it? Is it important or controversial? Maybe decision that came down, and so if people were watching the news, the Breonna Taylor situation was finally released to the public,
Right.
and unfortunately, one cop was charged. Not what was the exact charges? Because I don't want to get it wrong.
So the cop actually did get indicted, and I'm gonna look that up actually to double check myself too, because it's just been so much like happening here, like with the news. And I looked it up right now, and so one of the cops got charged out of all three of them that were there at the Breonna Taylor scene. And this has been a very interesting situation with her situation and also with George Floyd's situation. And this has caused more protests in the streets. And some of the protests have been peaceful, and some of them have not been peaceful. And it's almost kind of like we're going back into where we were at a couple months ago when Floyd first got killed. And this is a situation, brothers and sisters, to where not only are we kind of dealing with a situation with racial injustice in the United States of America, but we are dealing with the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic as well too. There's a lot of people that are struggling financially as well right now, and all three of these things are just not really. It's not mixing really correctly. It's just it's not a good situation, and a lot of people right now are very, very angry. You have some people out here that are very angry at the decision that was made. You also have people out here that are very angry at people who are out there rioting again, because I think like for a short period of time as well too, like we actually had it to where like people weren't really out in the streets rioting too much, but now we're kind of like people are still protesting, but it was going down, I think, a little bit though. But then now it's going to definitely spike back up. And also, too, just remember this, too, brothers and sisters, that we have the election too, and about another. Oh my gosh, I
Less
can't
than
believe
40
it.
days.
Yeah, it's it's going to be really crazy.
Just, just, just to talk to people. Just be safe. Try to be careful. If you don't have the same opinion about with someone else, as Izzy has said to me, don't take it out on them. It's not fair to take it out on people if you have a difference of opinion. If you have one opinion, that's fine. If someone else has another opinion, that's fine. Just don't take it out on other people. It's not fair. Don't physically harm them. Don't mentally harm them. Just let them be friends, and keep the politics to the side.
Right, brothers and sisters, and I know things have been very wild. So the Breonna Taylor situation. This is what recently happened. A grand jury decided to indict only one of the officers involved on first degree wanton endangerment charges. Now, this is actually coming from CNN. I'm reading right now. The charge applies to the risk put on Breonna Taylor's neighbors, but does not aim to hold the officer responsible for her death. Now, here's what I'm seeing personally in a lot of what's going on here is so Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, for what I understand, he actually was I'm very afraid of what was happening with when they were both in the room together, and he was actually going to take a gun out himself, which he did have, and he had like his own kind of weapon because he was trying to use his own self-defense. So what he did was when he saw the police come into the room, because there's been stories out here that have said that the cops actually knocked on the door first. And then there's also been other stories to where the police officer actually didn't even do that. And well, actually not even just one police officer, there's three of them, that they just went right into the room and they heard like the gunshots and everything like that from her boyfriend. So he's trying to use self-defense because he's getting afraid because he knows that his girlfriend is in there sleeping. And when the police went in there, the police actually also felt very disturbed themselves. So they kind of felt like, I hear gunshots. So you know what? Let me take my gun out and let's start going towards our self-defense.
It's almost like a premeditated defense without knowing what exactly is going on in that situation. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a huge fan of the no knock warrants because it's not fair to people that you get barged in on and you don't know what the heck is going on.
Right. And the other challenge too that I've noticed is a lot of people are thinking that the situation with Breonna Taylor is very similar to George Floyd's situation, which I believe it is similar into a certain sense, because you can see with George Floyd's, going back to his situation for a second, the situation with George Floyd was, you can tell that his intent was to murder him because he had his knee on his neck, and there was a couple other officers that were watching that happen. And now I agree with the situation on the other officers in George Floyd's situation getting what they got. And also, I mean, this officer right now, like, I mean, that did that to Floyd, I mean, he's going to completely, I don't know what he's going to be doing, but me personally, man, I mean, it's just one of those situations to where, like, unfortunately, it costed him his job. It also costed not only his police department, but we're talking about it caused police departments throughout the whole country to go into a frenzy.
Because it's not only that you're seeing riots across the country, and now you're seeing, I think we saw 2 cops that were in stable condition in Louisiana after the decision came down, and we're seeing riots in Louisiana. I think I saw when I was on Twitter looking around at the news that in Portland, someone of cocktail into a street where a bunch of people were standing, and it caused the crowd to sprout. Like,
yeah,
I get it, but I don't think the violence is helping the situation. I understand people are upset because we're having issues between cops and how they're handling the situation. Now, I don't want to see the other extreme where we're defunding police and we're not, because there are good police out there. Let's make that clear.
Definitely, there is. There's
a
lot of them.
There are good police. Everyone thinks that if one cop does a bad thing, that we should just say that every cop is guilty for everything, which is totally not the right way of thinking. I said this to you before we went on, Izzy, that people are very emotional about this situation. And trust me, I understand it. But we need to get back to reality and understand that not every cop is bad.
Right. And, you know, this situation with Breonna Taylor, you know, the difference between like Floyd and her situation is that the cop legally, because when a police officer is, I learned this, I swear to you guys, like I learn like new things like every week from talking to different people. And shout out to my neighbor too. And he's such a great guy. I love him to death. You know, and well, I kind of actually knew this a little bit too. You know, before we were talking the other day. But when a police officer feels like he's being endangered, he has every legal right, because he's an officer, to, if he wants to fire shots, he can. Or if he has a weapon, he can go after and use his weapons for his own self-defense. And in this situation, Because when you're a police officer and you like have a weapon and you get ready to use it, though, the second you get ready to swing it or you shoot that a gun that you have or
You're
the pistol or
responsible.
whatever it is, you're responsible for wherever that bullet and wherever that lands. And unfortunately, I don't believe that officer was trying to kill Breonna Taylor because he was trying to use his own self-defense. But however, the situation that unfortunately happened was the bullet went right into her and happened to kill her
But
because they were trying to use their self-defense towards her boyfriend that started getting real worried about the whole situation. And I think that's like what the difference is with Floyd and this is because you have it where this officer was trying to do the right thing on his end. And now people are looking at that. And I think people are looking at this in a different way. Like some people want him to get murder charges. And they don't only want that one officer to get murder charges. They want the other two too, because I was actually talking to Nick, brothers and sisters, about something that New Jersey Transit and so does the LIRR have in New York City to where
see something, say something.
right, you see something, you say something, and I really believe that that's what a lot of people are thinking in their mind right now when
That's
it
a
comes to the
huge
police.
that's a huge TV campaign also that they run on. You'll see it for the train commercials and LIRR and New Jersey Transit. If you see something, say something. Call. If someone leaves a mysterious bag on a train, tell somebody. Like,
Right.
and that's the big issue. Like, and one question that I've always had and I've never gotten the answer to is, first of all, how do you end up in the wrong place?
Yeah, I mean, it could happen in different kind of ways too, brother. I think like it could happen to where I mean, some people, unfortunately, like when they're drinking and stuff, they might not really know.
No. I'm not even talking about someone who's drunk. I'm talking about the police, how they ended up in the wrong place. And because of that whole confusion, how are those people supposed to know that whole situation's going on? That's
Right.
my point.
It's oh, I got you now. Okay. But yeah, no, it's a very crazy situation because sometimes too, like now I believe personally, my opinion, like when the police get calls to go places, sometimes people will go from place to place to place to place. And I guess the cop is just going by like what the dispatcher is saying to them. Or it could be a situation too where they're taking guesses to see where they have to go and protect and serve the
Right, but
community.
right, but at the
And
same time, how do you not look where you are and say, "Oops, I'm in the wrong place. Maybe I should go confirm from my dispatcher where I am before just barging into somewhere."
right. And then I believe sometimes too, man, like it also can go down to the level to where like things might change like on the fly when the police are going out to like a crime scene. And that happens a lot actually too. And it's also like another thing too, where it's like maybe the officers just weren't really looking, like maybe they were so because sometimes like and people do this a lot too when they get angry too. They may not take the time out to kind of think about what they're going to say because when you're angry, like your automatic first instinct is you're not even thinking really
When
about
your
like,
emotions get high.
your
Right.
emotions. You're right. Your emotion gets so high to where like you might say something so out of the blue that you didn't really mean to say, but it just happened to come out because your emotions were so wild at that level.
I
And
mean, to go
yeah,
back to a situation when we were first dealing with the pandemic and the issues when Floyd's death happened, do you remember? I think you were in the city at ABC, and I think you called me via FaceTime and you showed me what was going on outside our old building. Do you remember?
right. Yeah. And I do remember, excuse me.
I was terrified. You remember how terrified I was when you showed me that what was going on outside the window? Like, and it's scary to me because, like, and I was terrified. I was supposed to come into work, and I said no. I'm terrified. I don't want to be in this situation. Like, it's a very tough situation.
It is. And you know what it is too? I think it's like you have a couple of different kinds of people that are out here because when there's a civil unrest like this, you're gonna have people in the streets who are unfortunately some of them are gonna loot, some of them are going to riot and they're gonna go by and destroy things, And some of them are going to peacefully protest because they just want to raise awareness, but they want to do it in a peaceful way. And I think the challenge has been like, because for Black Lives Matter, I'll tell you this, brothers and sisters, I've spoken at 4 to 5 different protests, and each one of the protests that I did happen to speak at were all peaceful protests, and I really enjoyed all the stories, and there was a
By the
lot of
way,
people that came
you were
out.
really good. You were really good at those, by the way. If you really want to go check it out, go check out Izzy at these speaking arrangements because he is a natural born speaker for sure.
Oh, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. You too. I Yeah, so I when I was at the protest, it was so interesting because there's a lot of things that happen at those protests, and I think unfortunately what you're seeing on TV and with the media, it kind of because the media what they'll do as well too is they'll twist things into their own kind of way, and it's very sad because Black Lives Matter, what it has become over the last couple of months is not real. What I'm seeing, in my opinion, is not really what the cause is about, because the cause is really for BLM is about the injustice that people of color have compared to are other people that are in this nation. And that's really what it's about, though. And so it's about raising awareness, and it's really about going out here and just letting other people know that like we really want like a positive change, and we're not out here to really go after your stuff. And unfortunately, some people that have marched in BLM, I believe that some of them are thinking about what happened to African Americans and people of color back in the day. I think that some of them are over here and they're thinking in their mind, well, African Americans and people of color got their stuff ruined back in the day, and they're still out here killing us. And it happened to be a police officer. So why don't we go out now and we start looting and doing our own thing too, because they did that back to us back in the day. And also you have another, and here's another scenario too, is, and me and my neighbor talk about this all the time. It's like, what are they seeking revenge from? And I think that's what's getting into a lot of people's mind, because I thought about that for a little while too. And I think a lot of people are just going out here to loot and riot because they want to do it though. And it's also it's not only like African Americans who are out here doing this. Like you have our white brothers and sisters are doing this. You have our Asians, your Latino, you have so many different kinds of people out here who are just really just like fed up.
It's
And
scary. It's scary because, and I told you this, remember Izzy when I came out of the old building and they were looting the Macy's? They were looting the Macy's. They were destroying the windows. I was walking down to Penn Station and in New York City here for people who weren't watching New York, and they were looting the famous Macy's store.
they got a hammer and just knocked all those windows out
I
too.
couldn't believe it. All I could think was shock. Like I had no reaction. I couldn't be mad. I couldn't be anything. I was just shocked because I was walking through the streets and I see the people walking up and down the streets of New York with stuff that they looted, and I was just like, okay, I need to get out of here.
Yeah, and those stores, like, they have insurance actually too, so they're going to get all that back. And what I've been noticing too is a lot of people, I think that Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group and a hate group. And me personally, I don't believe it is, because the cause is definitely different than that. But the reasoning that people are seeing it that way, in my opinion, is because we're in a different time now. And because back in the day, a lot of people like in this generation right now, even people who are in their 30s, and people who are in around our age in our 20s, and then people who are in like their 40s, they weren't part of that generation back then. Like they were at like the tail end of it when stuff was really, 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 really bad when it came to segregation. And when it came to those Jim Crow laws and different things that were set into place to where people legally could kill other people because they didn't like what you kind of look like. And a lot of people now believe that BLM is a hate group because of, I believe, that reason, because we're just in a different time now. We're in and we've had a lot of different people such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Reverend Al Sharpton's out here. You have a lot of people who are trying to climb up into political platforms and situations higher up, so they can really like let people know like what's really happening out here. And I mean, I think the country has seen a positive change over the last 40 years. And I personally love Dr. King. I mean, one of his quotes was, we can't be judging people by the color of their skin, but we should be judging people by the content of their character. And that has stuck in my mind ever since like day one. And I think Dr. King is completely right about that. And it's sometimes too, brother, it's quotes that you will hear that was a powerful ass quote. Like, to me, that was really big. And I mean, now I gotta tell you too, like, I believe that there's a lot of injustice that we're still facing now, because it's almost just like I feel like we've cleaned up a lot of the segregation and a lot of those crazy laws that were put back into place back in the day, but we're still not 100% there yet, unfortunately. And there's a lot of situations too where people are not really, they may not understand because it's not being talked about too much on the mainstream media. Like, we had a situation in my town, actually. We had a sister named Ariana Green, and our local news channel, News 12 New Jersey, they actually had a reporter. His name is Walt Kane, and he did a phenomenal job. He went into our high school here in West Milford, New Jersey, and he was trying to get answers from all the different vice principals and different people, because this girl, she was a person of color, she was Hispanic, and she was getting a lot of death threats, and people were being very mean to her in the school. And it's sad because there's a lot of situations out here, and don't get me wrong, because Breonna Taylor and Floyd and Tamar and all these people were a horrible situation, but we also have to look at other situations too, that some of them may be even worse than like this situation that's going on in the country now. The mainstream media is pushing at us, because there's a lot of bad situations that happen in our schools that a lot of people, I don't think, really realize.
Right. And it's a tough situation. I was telling Izzy that there are so many different ways to interpret this situation, whether it's politics, whether it's your own opinion, whether it's just what your thoughts are at the time. And it's brutal. And actually, Izzy, I wanted to play that audio piece, which I played for you before because I really wanted you to hear it.
Right.
And Malika Andrews, who's an NBA reporter for ESPN, I think really summed this up in a way that makes you realize that we need to look out for one another and be there for one another when times get tough, right?
Oh, of course, definitely. I mean, because honestly, I kind of look at all of us Americans as teammates. I mean, we're all like, if we all love each other as family and teammates, can you imagine, my friend, like how much of an impact we're really going to be making out here? I mean, it's phenomenal. And, definitely do your thing playing that too, man, because, I'll talk to you too about like the political side, in which, my opinion, and also with the financial situation too, because that has a big part to do with a lot of this too.
All right. So here's Malika Andrews on with Scott Van Pelt. This was the other night after the playoff game.
And we've talked before, Scott, about how my job here is to objectively cover the truth, and to share what these players are going through. And today what they're going through is that they're hurting. And I have prided myself in being able to be objective and cover these sorts of issues. But when it is so clear that the system of objectivity in journalism is so whitewashed and doesn't account for the fact that when I am walking up the hill, my wonderful producer Melinda reminds me that Breonna Taylor was 26 and I am 25, and that could have been me. It is very hard to continue to go to work, and that's what these players were feeling. Now, players on both sides, they said that they didn't contemplate not actually playing in this game. They always knew that was something that they were going to do, but that doesn't mean that they were not disappointed in what happened today in Louisville.
So that's Malika Andrews. She works for ESPN. She's an up-and-coming... She's going to be a star. I've watched her cover these playoffs inside the bubble for the NBA playoffs, and she's been on top of this whole situation because... I don't know if you saw it, Izzy, but because I pay attention a bunch to the sports world in the NBA, there were games that were not played until they got this whole situation figured out. And they're showing, they're wearing Breonna Taylor shirts. They're trying to wear the slogans and stuff on the jerseys. They put it on the courts, and they're making a difference in the NBA. So what did you think about what she said first?
I think it's very powerful for, definitely like people like in our generation too. I mean, because she's a really young person.
She's 25.
She's only 25 years old. And, that really, it just touched me like hearing her say that. And I also think too, it's just like with the media and the way that they are with certain things, it's like, I just wish that like a lot of the times the media would really show like the full 100% like story of everything that's really going on, because sometimes they show what they kind of want to show. And what that girl was saying is, she's also part of, ESPN and like the NBA, and she's which I'm sure she's a voice for a lot of people right now too.
Give her credit, though. Give her credit. She's 25, and she.
Oh yes, definitely.
And she put her heart on her sleeve.
And I think what she said was very generic too. I think it was very like she didn't really go after. She didn't target anybody like directly, and I think that's a very good thing too, because she did that in a very like neutral way, which I think, especially like when you're going like on the air, I believe that that's really the best way you can really do things. I mean, you can definitely have your own opinion. But I think on the air, especially like with an audience like the NBA or the NFL, to where it's like your audience is so diverse watching that. And I also believe that like in these sports leagues, a lot of these players, not all of them though, but a lot of these players happen to be African American, and each of them kind of have like different opinions on this too.
NBA especially, a bigger percentage. But we're seeing, like I said to you, the NBA, the Players Association and the NBA really worked hard to get the message out there for the BLM movement and to make sure that their message was heard. Like, they refused to play games until their message was heard. And Commissioner Adam Silver of the NBA stepped up in that regard to let the message be heard, unlike the NFL and Roger Goodell, who doesn't deal well with these issues at all. And I've talked about this on my other show I do sports on, that the Roger Goodell needs to step up and show that the NFL cares. We're seeing issues right now in the NFL with mask issues, and we're seeing where the NFL just fined 3 coaches for not having their mask up all the way on the sidelines. They're getting $100,000 a coach and $250,000 per team for not having the mask all the way up. If you're fining people for the mask, which I get, everyone should wear a mask. Let me make that first of all. For us all to be safe, we need to wear masks because we need to protect everybody from getting sick. But if you're so busy fining the coaches for not wearing the mask up all the way, you're not thinking about other issues that are going on in the world.
Right. And the other thing too with the NBA is what you were saying about, the NFL. Well, any kind of owner that or big commissioner that runs like any kind of sports league. With Roger Goodell, it's a situation to where a lot of these companies right now, with what is going on out here, I believe that a lot of them don't really want to get too much involved more because of how everything really is in this nation right now. Because if you go back to, let's rewind back to the Goya situation that happened about a couple months ago, when you had a guy that came on there, the Goya CEO came on there and said that, you know what it is? we support Donald J. Trump and we love him and Goya loves him. Now, Donald Trump came out and said to everyone, go buy Goya. Now, you also had a lot of people too that unfortunately that may not support him, that they didn't really go and buy Goya. And then you have some people too that like they probably just didn't even care and they still did their own thing to eat the Goya products. And I think it's like a situation like that to where people don't really want to like take the risk financially, because financially what I've been noticing too with a lot of these sports leagues is a lot of people have been very upset at the knees. The knee has been one thing that people that they've been upset with, and they feel like that's a lot of disrespect to our country because, you know, just like our nation and how it's always been, like you're supposed to stand for the flag. And a lot of people, when they take that knee, it means that they are most likely with the movement, or they are just very fed up with everything going on, and they just want people. And I feel like that knee is almost like another reminder to people to let them know and say, hey, like, you know, like we just want to remind you about this and how we feel about it, and we're taking the knee now. And you know, it's like it's putting an image out for these sports leagues, and it's also actually unfortunately putting them in a really crazy position because they were already messed up, unfortunately, from the coronavirus with sales, because you can't have any fans in the stadium. Which I'm sure they worked out deals with the TV networks for different things. The second problem too is now with all this happening, and they are taking risks, which I think is good that a lot of big companies are getting more involved with the movement, but also at the same time too, not everybody's on the same page and they don't think the same way about the movement. And that's where a lot of viewership is going down. That's where a lot of people are saying, well, they take that knee, the Giants or the Jets, I'm not watching them no more. And we're talking about folks who have been watching these teams play for years and years and years. And I think also too, and that's a lot of politics that's mixed into that as well too. And a lot of people are out here nowadays, and what they're doing is they're trying to take each other down. You have people on the left and people on the right that are trying to just trying to take each other down in such negative ways, my friend, to where like it's revving other people up so bad. I mean, people are already revved up from Corona. People got revved up from Floyd, and now this is starting up again. And we are, and you know, now you also have with the election situation happening. There was actually a situation earlier that happened too. That, you know, actually, I don't know if you happen to see this video, but this is trending. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you know, actually, first of all, you know, God rest her soul. I personally thought she was an amazing woman. She did a lot to me for, well, in my opinion, I thought she did a lot for like women's rights, and me being an LGBTQ person, I thought she did a lot for my community too. And the situation earlier was that you had people out there that were chanting, vote him out, because Donald Trump came to the memorial that they had for her a little bit earlier in a nice service. And when people ended up hearing that, a lot of people agreed, some people didn't. And it's that kind of like hate that the country has, I feel like in my lifetime, I've never seen like this. And even people that are a little older too now, Nick, we're talking about people in their 70s and 80s and 90s that they have never seen anything like this either. And they've been around for decades. They've seen it all.
It's absolutely crazy the way this whole situation is playing out. And like you and I have said earlier, that everyone is entitled. I've said this. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone is allowed to be on one side of the issue or the other. Even though this Breonna Taylor situation, I don't think it's politics related, and at least in my opinion, it shouldn't be. We should all be worried that someone was gunned down, killed, and the no-knock warrant happened, and they went into the wrong place. That's really the situation here.
Right. And it's like people will use a situation sometimes for a political gain so they can make a point about what their assumption is. And I've been noticing that with a lot of these social influencers out here. You have social influencers like Terrence Williams, you have David J. Harris, you have Candace Owens, you have a lot of folks out here who are saying their own kind of opinions, and a lot of them are just, what I've noticed is a lot of them left are either right-sided, and a lot of them, well, with the people I just named, they're all right-sided, so they all support Donald Trump. So anything that is against Trump, they automatically don't like. They automatically don't like that, and it's like you have a lot of people behind them, and also too, it's also the vice versa too for Joe Biden. I mean, people that love Joe Biden, they can't stand anything that like the people on the right are doing. And the other issue too is that a lot of people are so fast to judge, brother, and they're not willing to really dive deeper into seeing like what the real facts are about certain situations. And I mean, it's scaring people now to the level to where like I've noticed a lot of my Facebook friends. I've noticed too a lot of my church members that I go to my church with, and I love all of them to death. I can tell that some of them are starting to get really worried too, because it's very crazy how the hate has, it's almost like people in their mind are just like, oh, you know what though, you just said something I don't like, so I don't like you no more. And here's another thing that's scary too, because people have been saying stuff on social media that I've never even heard people say in their entire life, and I've known them for years. Another thing we got to be careful with too is a lot of these hate groups out here, because there are a lot of groups that we don't even really know about right now, man, that are getting ready. And we're talking about people who they have plans. You have people right now that if Joe Biden gets in the office, that a lot of people who don't like him know what they're going to do. And we don't, and that the scary part is we all don't know what they're going to be doing. But if I can take an educated guess, I think it's going to be something really that we're not going to really like. And same with Donald Trump supporters. If he gets into the White House again, you have people who love Joe Biden so much to where like there's groups ready to go after Trump if he gets in there again. And it's just like people thinking with all this is what I think is scaring a lot of folks as well too. And it's like also I think the money as well, because a lot of people are still really ruined, unfortunately, from losing their jobs. I saw a number that I think over 750,000 people recently just filed again for unemployment.
The unemployment
where that number's coming from.
The unemployment number is crazy. People can't work. People can't pay bills. People can't pay bills for their families. Young kids that need to be paid for, and putting food on the table, and just trying to do everything to be able to make a living and have a family life and have a social life. It's just tough. And you know what? Like, I wish we could just put politics to the side. I know that's tough with being less than 40 days away from a presidential election happening, and and you and I working for a political talk station is not exactly helping it. But
oh gosh, yeah, it's crazy right now. Every week it's just like it's something new that they're putting on the air and stuff like that about it. And it's going to be very, and brothers and sisters, the best thing that we can really tell you guys is please be careful. Politics is one of those things where I'm not really a political person myself, but I've been following it a lot more recently because of COVID, and also because of the racial stuff in this country going on, and also because of the money too. Because see, the government, you really have to watch them, because I personally don't trust the government as far as I can really throw them, because these people, it's like they each have their own opinions about certain things, and they'll say one thing one day and one thing the next day, and then they'll say, we don't know if we can do this. And it's very sad, because I feel like a lot of it is not really about the people. A lot of it, unfortunately, is about the almighty dollar in the United States of America. And money really runs this country. And it's very sad, because you need money's like one of those things, in my opinion, though, to where it's just like I feel like we're not taking anything with us. But enjoy your money while you have it, though, definitely, because Actually, I got that quote from my grandma. She always told me, she was just like, "Oh yeah, Izzy, enjoy your money and stuff." She used to go in them for stores and spend
Tell me
200.
that all the time. You tell me that all the time, and I understand it, because you have to live your life. Like, money is nice, and like people say to us when we were growing up, try to make as much money as you can, and try to so you can retire and keep and live happy. Well, you still got to live happy regardless if you have $100 million or $1,000. I mean,
Yeah, and it's challenging because right now with everything happening, like a lot of parents, unfortunately, they they're well, actually, a lot of parents right now are working at home, because I have a couple neighbors that are too, and I mean they're doing like a phenomenal job, I think, working from home as well. But it's very challenging because it's almost just like living is so expensive too, to the level now to where it's like you have to have both people working. And that makes it challenging to have some kind of social life. And if you have your kids, it's just a lot happening. And I think the first thing, honestly, that we have to do is, and this is going to be I think it's going to be easier said than done, in my opinion, guys, is the pandemic. Once we get this pandemic under control, I feel like we're going to be able to move forward with the next step, which would be, after all of the racial injustice and the riots and the looters and everything that we've been seeing out here. The next thing that we should do, I think, is to really try to understand what somebody else is saying. I think, see, what I personally like to do is I like to get like different people's opinions on a lot of different things, because
so do
it
I.
kind of helps me. Yeah, you too. Like, and it kind of helps me like come up with an ultimate conclusion about
And
a
it's, and
situation.
it's not just this topic. I could be talking sports. I could be talking politics, which you and I don't do as often. We try to stay away from on this show, but it just happened to be a very difficult topic that had to be discussed. But
Right.
when I started in the radio business, or before the radio business, in college radio, if I really wanted information, I would interview somebody for a half an hour, 40 minutes, and just and people say, why do you do that? I said, because the long form interview is the best way to get the information necessary for what you're trying to accomplish. And when I got done with a lot of these interviews, I'd say, "Oh, I learned 4 or 5 things out of a half an hour, 40-minute interview, and then I can go and learn more about it because I learned from other people."
Right. And I mean, I think that's great too, because and interviews are great in that way, because you really do learn a lot, like when you're talking with somebody too, because especially somebody that like you're not too familiar like with what they do for a living, but you actually are, you're willing to listen to them. And I think that's what a lot of us out here have to learn to do, unfortunately, because right now a lot of us are just not doing that. We're not willing to listen to other people, and
We're
we're
so
not willing to dive deeper.
we're so quick to judge other people's opinions, and we jump down their throats, and we don't even let them finish a sentence and say, "Well, I think this." No, bad, bad, bad. You can't have that opinion. What do you mean I can't have that opinion? I can have whatever opinion I want. You can have whatever opinion you
Yeah.
want. If you don't like it, too bad. We live in a country where we have freedom of speech to say what we want, and if you don't like it, then I hate to say this, but it's tough.
Yeah, brother. And it's just, we all have to really just, it's going to be hard. I think it's not going to be impossible, but it's going to be very difficult. I can tell you now, the next month, because now you're going to start. But I invite you too, brothers and sisters, please be very careful out here, and please watch what people are doing out here. Like, I would definitely, with the media and stuff like that too. And, we both work in media, and, you know, I think the media is right half the time, but I think half the time they could be telling some lies and stuff like that. You have to really just really watch what's really happening. And with Breonna Taylor, to close this out for this evening, is her family did get, I believe, $12 million, which I think is phenomenal. And she also, which I mean, I personally feel that she got her justice with this cop, because the cop did have to take responsibility for his actions. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what the other two police officers are going to get, which I personally think, in my opinion, the other two police officers that were there with that cop that got in trouble with Breonna Taylor's situation, they're going to probably get fines. and it's probably going to be fines that I think are going to be like maybe 10,000 or something like that, though.
Well,
but who knows what's going to happen though? Because with the riots and looters, like that's like almost like their goal is to make it so that they get something towards them that maybe some people might not think that that's really what they deserve, but then other people do think they deserve it. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to really be about what the courts are going to decide.
The last thing I'll say is they're trying to pass a law. I think that it came out of Kentucky or Louisiana. I don't remember. I think it was Louisiana, that they're trying to pass Breonna's law, where they're trying to make no-knock warrants a thing of the past, and that cops have to wear their security cam
Right.
at all times so that they're being recorded in case something happens. So that's the big thing that they're discussing, that they need to have evidence just in case a situation happens and they need to go back to the footage and take a look at it.
And I think honestly that would definitely work. And because now, I mean, people are already doing that now. Like people are filming everything. I mean, it's just like all you gotta do now is just take this out and just start filming stuff. And
I see people do this when I'm walking around in the city going to work. If something is going on the street, there are 10 or 15 people and they're blocking the stairs sometimes to get out of to go up to the street to where Madison Square Garden is, and they're filming, and I'm like, what are we doing? Not out loud, but I'm saying to myself, what are you doing? What, like, rather than maybe help somebody, why would you take your phone out and film it?
I think that's this generation, brother. I think that's unfortunately the route that like we're in right now with everything really happening. I mean, I think honestly, in my opinion, like I think it's good that people do film stuff because then you can kind of get like more of an idea about what's really happening. Because it's almost just like everyone's like their own personal security camera. But
no, I understand that, but I'm just saying it's odd sometimes. Like I'm sure you've seen it where people just stand there and they film whatever's going on. Two people are fighting.
Oh, definitely, it's crazy.
They got it's evidence, and then they put it on Twitter or Facebook, which is another one I think is weird. Well, why would you post it rather than saying, "Oh, wait, maybe we need help. Maybe if we just got help for these two people, maybe they could hash out whatever the argument was, and then it wouldn't. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding."
And I think the other thing is too, and you know what's sad too with the police is right now with everything that's been happening with them, like with them getting defunded here in New York City, a lot of people now feel like, well, at least the police, a lot of cops feel like they're not getting the correct support that they feel they should be having. So they're actually, some of them are listening to calls going on. Like we have a murder in Brooklyn, New York right now. The NYPD may be listening to that. And a lot of them are just saying, okay, it's all good. We'll take our time getting there. And if we make it over there in time, then like, it's almost just like they feel if they're not getting the support, which a lot of them unfortunately are not,
well,
that why should we go over there and go crazy to help people if they're not supporting us?
Let me throw one more thing in. The other issue, maybe not with support, is cops are afraid to get involved because they don't want to be the next trending cop that gets caught in a situation that maybe they didn't mean to get caught in the middle of. So,
right.
So we're seeing obviously with Floyd, the guy went away because he murdered somebody.
Right.
The situation with Breonna Taylor, that's still kind of up for discussion, so to speak. But
right,
cops are so afraid around the country, and I don't blame them. They don't want to, if they react and someone, like you said, takes their phone and starts videoing it and it trends, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and then that's when the mainstream media grabs onto it, and then they turn that into a political game most of the time. And sometimes they may twist it to become something that unfortunately it's not. And it's you just have to really be very careful. I'm very happy personally that like this happened for Breonna Taylor's situation. We still have more to come with that. But so far, I'm happy from what's been going on, and we'll see what happens very shortly. You know, I think I consider myself an independent, so I'm in the middle of. I'm not a Democrat nor Republican, so I consider myself somebody who takes a look at situations, and I try to diagnose it or dissect it the best way possible to a solution that I think would work out well for both people, not only the cop but also for like her situation as well.
And you know what? I tell people, because people ask me, well, oh, well, you must be associated one side of the, and I said, no, I'm not. I tell people, people ask me, who are you voting for? I said, first of all, I don't tell people who I vote for. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. And two, I don't know what I'm doing this year, for crying out loud, because there's so many perceptions coming left and right that you just don't know anymore. And you have to read into every situation differently. Each person has their own rhyme or reason for how they're going to handle their political views. You and I, and this is not a secret, we don't really like politics.
Yeah, I personally don't. Like, I mean, I just really, but I feel like it's also something too, like with different kinds of like, like this situation is just something that a lot of people are revved up about because
and
now
this
it's
isn't
like,
politics. Let's make that clear. This is not politics. This is a situation that caused a lot of controversy. So people need to understand, this is not politics. This is a situation that everyone is looking at around the world and how it's going to be handled, because it's going to affect every other situation going forward.
Right.
But all right, we've been on here for 51 minutes. We give it a rest. We'll come back with a happier topic next week. And I told Izzy there might be a little bit of an interesting topic we can do if I can find this guest that I showed him earlier before we came on here.
Yes, and it has something to do with something that everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people like to do, which
we know you do.
Oh yeah, I do like to drink sometimes, and it has to do with that though, and it's amazing because it's we don't really want to spoil it though, but we'll spoil it and kind of let you know very soon right here on Late Night with Nick and Izzy.
I like the ring to that now, Late Night with Nick and Izzy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? What do you guys think? I mean, I kind of like that. I think
comment on our page if you like. We were going with Nick and Izzy show. I kind of like Late Night with Nick and Izzy better.
Yeah, me too. Actually, so what we're gonna do is, you guys are gonna see like a lot more things like from us very soon too. If you check out the YouTube channel as well too, Nick and Izzy show, we'll eventually go over there and change that. And yeah, we got some things definitely in the works though. And we have some guests coming up very soon, and we're gonna work on different content for you because we love you so much for watching, and we thank you so much.
And we got some radio people possibly in our future too, since that's our forte. So
yeah, definitely some people from New York City. Yeah,
but I think we've bugged you for close to an hour, and I think that's probably enough time. You think, Izzy?
I think so too, brother. And I'm gonna actually go get something to eat because I am starving.
Always Izzy with food. Oh, every episode's just going to end with Izzy. Nick, I need to go get food. And
I really do.
That's Izzy Richardson. I'm Nick Morganson. This is Late Night with Nick and Izzy. We will be back with you next week. Good night, everybody.
We'll talk to you. And # just remember, Izzy loves you.